الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. يا مؤمنين والمؤمنات، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
Allah for the future appearance of Imam Hajj and his well-being. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد. This is not a salawat. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
I still didn't hear your voices.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
As you can read on the projector, and some of you may have received the email, the discussion for today or tonight, inshallah, will be regarding the true Hajj or the true pilgrimage. As we are on the 10th of the month of the Hijjah, today we celebrated the day of Eid al-Adha. Congratulations to all the Muslimin and Muslimat and to all of you, brothers and sisters, on this auspicious and happy occasion of Eid al-Adha. Inshallah, when we get to speak about the true Hajj, we will understand what is really meant by Eid and why did we celebrate today. Starting with Hajj or pilgrimage, we start by defining it or explaining it from the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about Baytullah al-Haram. He says, إِنَّ أَوَّلَ بَيْتٍ وُضِعَ لِلنَّاسِ لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةَ مُبَارَكًا وَهُدًى لِلْعَالَمِينَ فِيهِ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ مَقَامُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمَنْ دَخَلَهُ كَانَ آمِنًا وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. This ayah is basically the main ayah that tells us that Hajj is a wajib act, an obligation and a wajib act upon every believer. So indeed the first house to be set up for mankind, so this ayah tells us that Baytullah al-Haram, the Kaaba, is the first place of worship. The first place of worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose and asked Nabiullah Adam, as we read in the Quran, who rebuilt the Kaaba? Prophet Ibrahim. But did he build it for the first time? He rebuilt the Kaaba. So the first one who ever built the Kaaba was Nabiullah Adam. And this ayah confirms that, telling us that the first place of worship, in the awwala baytin, the first house to be set up for mankind, is the one at Mecca, or the land that Mecca is in. Mecca, whether it's that city, whether it's the Kaaba, whether it's the larger area, it refers to that area that the Kaaba is in. Blessed and a guidance for all nations. In it are manifest signs, Abraham's station, Maqam Ibrahim, where Abraham stood, and whoever enters it shall be secure. the part that makes it a duty. And it is the duty of mankind towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make pilgrimage to the house. Man istata'a ilayhi sabila means for those who can afford the journey to it. So can afford meaning they can do it, whether financially, health-wise, and all other requirements. And should anyone renege, deny, refuse to do so, refuse to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is indeed needless of the creatures. In this ayah, towards the end of the ayah, we read وَمَنْ كَفَرَ. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ in this ayah refers to denying and refusing to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do the Hajj. Also the term kufr is referring to what? We know kufr is disbelieving in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is so important to answer the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger and perform this Hajj. Anyone who denies to do so is actually disbelieving. This is the extent of which someone puts himself in if he denies to do the Hajj. Very important act, so we want to learn what is Hajj. Now, the physical Hajj. As someone is going to Hajj, most of you have known someone or you yourself went, you know that you have to prepare. It's a journey. It's a trip that you want to go, you have to go to. Therefore, we start preparing. Financially, we have to buy a ticket. Then we have to join with a group that is going to Hajj. Then we have to make sure that everything is looked after. The business, the studies, whatever it is that we have to do back home, we have to make sure it's all well looked after. It's very important. These steps, I want you to pay attention because these steps have two sides to them. Every step in Hajj has two sides to it. The physical aspect and beyond physical. Okay? Or in other words, spiritual aspect. So physically, this is what we're doing. But I want you to reflect on the next part when we get to the next part. The first thing is we have to prepare. So we get all the debts looked after. If we have debts to anyone, we pay them. Most people, you know that they go and start asking about the khums because they know they can't go with the money that the khums is not paid. Some people think they can just pay khums on the money that they go with it to Hajj and that's it, but that's not how it works. They have to purify their wealth and then they can take part of their wealth and go to Hajj. This is very important. So this is some part of the preparation. So we prepare ourselves. Then at the same time we prepare our clothes and whatever else that we might need. In that preparation you have many lists and checklists that people go through. Did you get your toothpaste? Did you get your cream? Did you get all the things that people need to maintain themselves in this trip? So that's the preparation and travel arrangements. The next thing is when we go actually to the land of Arabia or to the near Mecca. Then there are two parts. There are the first part to Hajj, which is the Umrah. And I want you to pay good attention, inshallah, one day, those of you who will go, will benefit from this very well. Because this aspect is important. We have to do all this. But besides this is not all of it, and you will get to know why. So this first part is the Umrah, and we'll go through the Umrah. The second part is the Hajj at-Tamattu. Okay, this is one type of Hajj that I will be going through. Now, in the first part, which is the Umrah, there are several things that one has to do, or 5 main steps. The first one is wearing the ihram. Wearing the ihram, which is the clothes of, have you seen the ihram? You know, the white clothes that all the Hujjaj wear? That's the first part. Okay? So it has its way. You have to do your ghusl and your intention and so on and so forth. And you get yourself dressed. You take off all the clothing, the normal clothing that you always wear, and you wear just those two pieces that have no knitting in them and no sewing. That's the two pieces that people wear for men. For women it's a little different, but it has to be white and it has its conditions. That's the first step. Then the second one, after wearing the ihram, we go to to the Kaaba. And you do the tawaf. You rotate around the Kaaba. You rotate 7 times around the Kaaba, starting from one particular spot, and you finish in that same spot. Your shoulder has to be always facing the Kaaba. You don't face the Kaaba with your face, and you don't turn your back to the Kaaba. It has its conditions. And the next thing is you finish the tawaf and you do salat al-tawaf, the prayer, the 2 rak'ah prayer. You pray by the Maqam Ibrahim, as the Quran mentions it, the place and station of Ibrahim. Then the next one is we go to Safa and Marwa and we do the sa'i from Safa to Marwa and backwards. 7 times sa'i, and finally we do what is called taqsir. Taqsir means you take a little bit of your hair. It literally means shortening. So you take a little bit of your hair, your eyebrow, your beard, some part of your hair, you cut it, and that's it. That is your umrah. Your umrah is done. It has to be done before Hajj al-Tamattu. This umrah is wajib for those who want to do Hajj. Then next, we have the Hajj, the actual Hajj, which is called Hajj al-Tamattu. Again, after the first part, you had worn the ihram. When you finish your umrah, you take off your ihram. That's it, you're done. One part. There are certain things that are not forbidden anymore. Then the next ihram, you have to pay attention. Ihram comes from the term haram. Certain things that become forbidden. So when we say Allahu Akbar, what is it called? Takbiratul ihram. Meaning what? I'm saying takbirah, which is pronouncing that Allah is greater, that is takbirah, Allahu Akbar. And at the same time, everything that is forbidden in salat starts from there. So before the takbirah, I can do normal things. I can talk, eat, laugh. Once I say the takbirah, everything that is forbidden during salat becomes forbidden from then until the taslim. Okay? The same thing with the ihram of Hajj. There are certain things that once you wear the ihram become forbidden. You cannot do anymore until that ihram is over. So the first stage finishes with Umrah. The next stage starts by wearing the ihram again in Mecca. Then after wearing the ihram, we go to a specific location and a mountain and its surrounding, it's valley. I believe it's about 12 miles away from Mecca. People travel there and stay there from noon until sunset of the 9th of the Hijjah, which was like yesterday. Yesterday we did it, those of you who did the A'mal, started from after Asr prayers, after Zawal, and they did the Ghusl and the A'mal of the 9th of the Hijjah, or the day of Arafah. That's because people are standing where? They are staying in Arafat. And that is why we do the A'mal even if we don't go to Hajj, because we want to feel like the Hujjaj, and that's why we can celebrate on the day of Eid. So that's the first thing. And then after that, after sunset, people go to a place called Muzdalifah. It's between Arafat and Mina, towards Mecca. So they go to Muzdalifah, and in Muzdalifah they have to stay there on that evening, and there are salawat, du'as and stuff. At the same time you have to collect small pebbles. Why do we need the pebbles? We'll get to that, because we have to use them to throw on the shaitan. So we have that. In Muzdalifah, we have the collection of pebbles, and we have to take enough to be able to do 2 days, 3 shaitans, and a third day possibly, and 1 day, 1 shaitan. Each shaitan gets 7 pebbles. So I'm not going to do the maths now, but you can calculate them and work it out later. Then, next is the stoning of the smallest shaitan. That will be on the next day, on the day of Eid. On a day like today, the Hajjaj went to a place called Mina. In Mina, there are shaitan, there are shayateen. Is shaitan himself in there? It is not himself. Obviously, it is a representation of shaitan. And we'll get to what all that means in the next stage. Now, this is, as I said, the physical Hajj. We go to a place, we are told, that's it. The group, depending on which group you go with, they may or may not explain further, but you know that this is your duty today. You go to the smallest jamra or smallest shaitan, and you start throwing the pebbles, and then you finish with the stoning the first, the smallest one. Then you go and slaughter the animal. You have to slaughter and sacrifice. That is the sacrifice that the name of Eid al-Adha is after. Why is it called Eid al-Adha? Eid al-Adha is the Eid of sacrifice. So it's called Eid of sacrifice because people on the day of Eid, on the 10th of the Hijjah, after they finish the Wuquf in Arafah on the 9th, and in Muzdalifah in the eve of Eid, then on the day of Eid they are in Mina doing the Jamarat and then slaughtering the animal. After they slaughter, then comes the shaving. You've seen Hajjaj when they come back, they come shaven. Most of them. If it's your first time, you have to shave as a man, not the ladies. And if it's after the first time, after Hajjatul Islam, they don't have to shave. Therefore, not all the Hajjaj will find shaven, but all the ones that have gone for the first time, they shave their heads. So that's done on the day of Eid. Then next is, we have 2 other days. Then they go back to Mecca and do tawaf. And this tawaf is to finish the first stage. Then obviously prayer of tawaf. Anytime they do tawaf, you know tawaf? It's rotating around the Kaaba. Or cycling around the Kaaba. Then there is a prayer after tawaf. There's another sa'i. Anytime we do tawaf, we have salat, and then we do sa'i or walking between Safa and Marwa. And there's a reason why it's called sa'i. Sa'i is not walking. Sa'i is when you're trying for something, and that's where we're gonna get to that, inshallah. So then certain things that are not allowed during Hajj become allowed at that stage. One of them is the wearing of perfume. During Hajj, you should not wear perfume. This is the stage where you can. Then there is Tawaf al-Nisa, very important part of the Hajj. Another Tawaf and another prayer for Tawaf. Then you have to stay in Mina during the eve of the 11th and the eve of the 12th day of the Hijjah, 2 more nights. And on those days, you go to the Jamarat, to the shayateen, the 3 shayateen this time, and you throw 7 pebbles on each of them. So that's concludes in that we have concluded our Hajj. And that's the quick map. As you can see, the Mecca, number 2 and number 7, that refers to Mecca. And within Mecca is the Kaaba, obviously, in the middle of the city of Mecca. And Miqat, if you want to know, is where we actually where our ihram. So as we arrive, coming from that direction, see the Hajj map sign? Under that we have Miqat, that's where we wear our ihram. Then we come to Mecca, we do our Umrah. Then we go to Arafat, we do our Wuquf. Then come back to Muzdalifah, come back to Mina, remember the stages, and then back to Mecca, back to Mecca doing the tawaf after the day of Eid. Remember, we finish with the tawaf and then we have tawaf al-Nisa. And then obviously we have to come back to Mina for 2 more nights. So this is in short and very quick summary of the physical Hajj. Okay, we have done a physical Hajj. Is our Hajj accepted so far? If we did all this correctly, the physical aspect of Hajj is accepted and we don't have an obligation to go back to Hajj. That's it, we fulfilled the obligation. Now the question is, what is the true Hajj? That was the title of the whole presentation, and I want you to pay very good attention from here. We have a riwayah from the Prophet, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that in that hadith he says, لَيْسَ لِلْحِجَّةِ الْمَبْرُورَةِ ثَوَابٌ إِلَّا الْجَنَّةِ. There is no reward beneath or less than paradise for a Hajj that is accepted. So if someone fulfills the requirements of his Hajj, he will definitely be guaranteed paradise. Listen to the next hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, الحجاج يصدرون على ثلاثة أصناف. There are 3 groups of Hajjaj that each of them will receive something. The first one, صنف يعتق من النار. One group is freed from the hellfire, guaranteed. That's it. The next group, وصنف يخرج من ذنوبه كهيئة يوم ولدته أمه. The second group, he exits and he escapes from his sins and becomes the way his mother gave birth to him. Sinless, pure. You know how children, when they are born, everyone adores them. Why? Because they are sinless and they are pure. They have done nothing wrong. A child that's just born, innocent, completely innocent. This is the state of someone who completes his Hajj and does his Hajj rightfully. That is his reward. The second group gets the reward of completely wiping of the sins. And the third group, وَصِنْفٌ يُحْفَظُ فِي أَهْلِهِ وَمَالِهِ فَذَلِكَ أَدْنَى مَا يَرْجِعُ بِهِ الْحَاجِ. And the third group will be protected in his family and in his wealth. So his wealth and his family will be protected. But that is the least reward that the Hajjaj will receive. So the least reward is to be protected in your family and wealth. It's very important, but that's the least. Because for your sins to be wiped, of course that's a better reward. For you to be guaranteed paradise, the first group that the Imam says, صِنْفٌ يُعْتَقُ مِنَ النَّارِ. That's it, free from fire. Fire cannot touch him. Someone who does his Hajj. Some of those who go to Hajj. So that the question here is, and I want you to try and think about the answer to this question. Is everyone who completes Hajj considered a Hajj? Is everyone who completes Hajj considered from those people who is guaranteed heaven, guaranteed paradise? Is everyone who completes his Hajj, he does the physical Hajj that we just spoke about, with all the steps of the Hajj, making sure that his recitation of the salawat, his labbaik is correct. Everything that he does is 100% correct. Is that the Hajj that the Prophet is talking about? Is that the Hajj that the Imam is talking about? I'll ask you another question. Salat is another obligation, a daily obligation. In the daily salat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran promises us that those who pray should be protected from sinning. Because the salat, inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. Salat, indeed, salat protects and stops one from committing indecency and evil acts. It's a protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many people do we know that pray, yet they commit sins? Do we not know many of them? How many people do we know that have gone to Hajj and they came back from Hajj, yet they're just like the state that they were before they went to Hajj? In every aspect. Whether they are liars, God forbid, whether they're in their business, whether they have deception, whatever it may be, whether they are bad-mannered with their family, with their wife, or the wife with the husband, whether they're bad children to their parents, whether they're bad brothers and they don't try and keep a good bonding with their brothers and sisters and siblings. Whatever it may be, they go to Hajj, they come back, they're the exact same people. What happened? Did they get forgiven? Those who get really forgiven will not continue sinning and falling into the same thing. So what happened to these people? This is a very important question. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says a very beautiful ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 196. وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. In the rest of the ayah, then there are certain conditions and certain rulings with the فَإِنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ فَمَا اسْتَيْسَرَ مِنَ الْحَجِّ. That's to do with if you don't have money, if you have problem, what you do in Hajj. But the first part of the ayah is my concern. وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. And complete your Hajj and your Umrah. You know, the Hajj, part of the Hajj was starting with the Umrah, remember? So, complete it for Allah. So what do people go to Hajj for? If everyone goes to Hajj for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, complete your Hajj for Allah? Tahsil al-hasil is not something that God will be asking for. Asking for something that's already there. It is not possible. God will not be asking for people to complete their Hajj for Him when they are already doing that. Therefore, that ayah tells us clearly that many people are in Hajj but not for Allah. God knows why. God knows what they're doing. But their intention is not sincere. They're not so purified to start with. And therefore, they're not doing the Hajj and Umrah for God. And that's why God is reminding them, complete the Hajj and Umrah for Allah's sake. Then we have a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. In this hadith, it comes with a story. A man comes to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, there are so many people. They were standing at a very elevated area near the Hujjaj, watching over all these people doing Hajj. And then he said to the Imam, MashaAllah, there are so many people. Imam said, مَا أَكْثَرَ الْحَجِيجُ وَأَقَلَّ الضَّجِيجُ. How many Hujjaj there are, and how noisy. Sorry, مَا أَكْثَرَ الضَّجِيجُ وَأَقَلَّ الْحَجِيجُ. I said it the other way around. How much noise there is, and how few are the Hujjaj. Then he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, all these people. He says, the Imam says to him, yes, but without the requirements of Hajj. In that hadith, Imam says, without the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Without the wilayah, and wilayah comes with following Ahlul Bayt. Without being the right followers of Ahlul Bayt, this Hajj is nothing. And this Hajj is almost, Imam says to them, to his companions, that this Hajj for them is almost like idol worshipping. You know the idols? Hajj for these people are like idol worshipping, because they're not worshipping the right God that we know, the Allah that is one God, the one that has all His attributes. They don't know that God. In fact, they have shirk. In fact, they have not understood the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, who are they praying to? Who are they worshipping? In another story from Imam Zayn al-Abidin salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Zayn al-Abidin also was in Hajj. And a man came to him again, very impressed by the number of Hajjaj. So many people are in Hajj. In one riwayah, this man is narrated to be Abu Basir. Whether it's Abu Basir or not, Allahu A'lam. But a man comes to the Imam and he says to the Imam, MashaAllah, so many Hajjaj there. Look how many Hajjaj. Then the Imam says to him, similar to what his father said, yes, so many people are making noise and doing tawaf, rotating around the Kaaba, but the Hujjaj are very few. And in reality, there are only few people in one riwayah, which means it's one of the years that Imam was in Hajj, because in every year they reminded people about these things. It wasn't just the one year. In one of the years, he told his companions, or he told one of his companions, that the only real Hujjaj is me, my camel, and the slave that is with me. That is it. In another riwayah, in another story, Imam says to the companion, come closer. And then he lets him look from between his fingers. Imam puts his fingers, and he says to him, look between my fingers. The man looks between the fingers of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. He looks at the Hujjaj only to see that most of them were animals. They were not even humans. They were beasts. He saw them at their reality. Because some of a greedy, aggressive man could be looked upon like a dog, God forbid. A man who is not concerned with people around him could be looked at as another animal. All the attributes of animals that you can think of, that animals have it, because they don't have the intellect. A man that does not use his intellect and does not use his heart will be like them. Then the Imam showed him, and he said, this man, when he saw, he said, I swear by you, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, I only see 4 people. The rest I can't see but animals. So yes, so many people go to Hajj. But who are the real Hujjaj? This is what is important. And that's when we have to realize where the steps are in terms of the physical steps should be together with all the spiritual steps. We'll get to that. There's a nice poem that an Iranian poet with his surname is Isfahani. He says this beautiful poem. He says, Hazrat Angah do angushت مبارک بگشود گفت بنگر بشرند اینان یا که جانورند بوبصیر آنگه از دیده دل کرد نظر دید محرم شدگان اکثرشان گاو و خرند. صلی علی محمد و علی محمد. اللهم صل علی محمد و علی محمد. This is telling the same story in a poem that when Imam showed him between his fingers, he realized that yes, most of them are not actually humans, they are animals. So now we look at the spiritual Hajj. We said we have the physical Hajj and we have the spiritual Hajj. Let's look at the differences between the physical Hajj and the spiritual Hajj. I know most of you have had a long day, but maybe with the salawat, you can wake up again. I've had a long day as well since morning prayers. So Alhamdulillah, this is a very blessed day, on the day of Eid, Alhamdulillah. So, the voyage, the first part is the travel and the voyage from the world of creatures to the world of the Creator, to the Creator actually. Remember in the section when we spoke about the physical Hajj. In the physical Hajj, we were preparing, if you remember, in the physical Hajj, we were going to our neighbors, paying our debts, making sure that our money is purified, making sure that if I have any issues with people, I fix that up, all these things. At the same time, I prepare my bag, I buy my ticket, all these things that I do as a preparation. In the spiritual sense, I have to prepare what? Prepare my heart. I have to take off all the weights. This act of worship, which is Hajj, is a trip that I have to go light. I want to travel towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can't go with all these weights. I can't go thinking about my business and people who I owe money and people who I may have done something wrong by. I can't go with all these thoughts on my mind. I can't go with all these sins that I have between me and my God. Therefore, I have to start by repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I sit before traveling to Hajj. I have to sit down and I sincerely say, Oh Allah, I have sinned. I have oppressed myself. But now I come to you. I want to travel this trip to you. This trip to Hajj, this voyage to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, I want to be clean. I want to be clear. I want to cleanse my soul. If I have sinned, oh God, forgive me. If I have done the wrong thing, oh God, forgive me. If I have slipped, oh God, forgive me. If I have done the wrong thing by people, oh God, forgive me, but yet I have to go and ask them for forgiveness. That's why you see people that are going to Hajj, they start coming and visiting their friends and neighbors and their colleagues and co-workers, and they start asking them for forgiveness. If I have done anything, if I had said anything, please forgive me. Then, if I owe anyone money, if I borrowed something from anyone, I make sure I return it. Any money, any belongings that I borrowed, I make sure I return it. And at the same time, if I have any money owing to anyone, including my khums, I pay it off, I go light. I have cleaned my books with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have repented, and I have asked people for forgiveness, I have given them their belongings. That is the part that is the spiritual part. I'm preparing my heart because it's not just a physical trip that I'm taking. I want to travel towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second step, the first step is known as min al khalq ila al haq, the trip from creatures to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second step is min al haq ila al haq, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what I mean by that is now we have started a trip to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was the first trip, from our material world towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the second step, we have to start traveling from one level of sincerity to a higher level of sincerity. We have to get even closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, when we wear the ihram, we have done all what we have done before. Now we come to wear the ihram. Like what we do in Takbiratul Ihram, we realize that now we are doing this ihram, meaning it's like we are wearing our kafan, our shroud. We are getting ourselves ready to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like it's the day of judgment. That is why some of you ask me, why don't people wear perfume? Why aren't we allowed to wear perfume and so on and so forth? The answer is because in Hajj we have to feel like it's the day of judgment. It's not anymore just a normal trip that we are taking, a daily trip, normal touristic trip. The other part is the talbiyah. When we are doing the talbiyah also, All these parts, I want to skim through them because we're running out of time. So the next part, we have the tawaf. Again, when we are doing the tawaf, we are thinking of not just circling a Kaaba, a building that is Kaaba. We are thinking of the fact that we are circling like the angels. The angels are circling around the arsh, around the throne and the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now we are circling with our body around this Kaaba, saying, "Oh Allah, we are at your service. We only want to serve you. We don't want to serve anyone else. We don't want to do anything else but to serve you, oh Allah." Then the next part comes, the final part. All these parts of Hajj, then we'll have the physical part and the spiritual part. Then finally comes the voyage from the Creator to the world of creatures. And this is the final part, but yet the most important part. And I want you all to pay attention to this part. Before we went to Hajj, we did what? We did repentance. We repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the end part. There was a hadith that summarizes or speaks about all this from Imam Sadiq, clearly gives us the meanings, the deep meanings of every step of the Hajj. The spiritual meaning, not just the physical meaning. Explains to us and gives us the ta'weel, the real explanation of each step of Hajj. Inshallah, another time, if we have the chance to, we'll discuss that hadith. But before that, the final step is the trip and the voyage. Now, from the Creator to the creatures. What I mean by that, as I said, before we went to Hajj, we had to go a voyage from the creatures to the Creator. من الخلق إلى الحق. And we said that we have to clear our books, clean everything, make sure we go light. If we owe anyone money, we give them back their money. If we have any debts, we pay it. If we have anyone that we've done the wrong thing by, we ask them for forgiveness. All that we clean and we cleared with people. Now comes the next stage. And within Hajj, we did min al-haqq ila al-haqq, trying to get even closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Cleanse ourselves to the max and try and achieve that highest level, highest reward, which is guaranteed paradise. Guaranteed sins all cleaned and guaranteed paradise from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. But now we're coming back to the same world that we live in, the same home that we live in, the same people that we lived with. We're coming back to them. Should we come back exactly like what we were before, or should we be any different? And this is min al-haqq ila al-khalq. This is the most important part. And Imam says the most difficult part is this part, to maintain your Hajj. Because yes, you got closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you really did the first two steps right. But now your duty is to come back and share with others what you gained. And this is what the Prophet says in one narration, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, the most difficult thing for me was the ayah that tells me that I have to maintain it, me and the people that did istighfar with me, my companions, my community, not just me. So I'm coming back with the intention of helping others and guiding others to what I achieved. Can I do that by being exactly what I was? Can I do that by lying, cheating, deceiving, hurting people, being disobedient to my parents, being disloyal and not dutiful to my parents, being very bad with my husband or my wife or my family? Can I do that while I'm doing all this? Of course not. And this is where, as I said, it is the most difficult part. It is conveying the message and inviting people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with what? With our actions, with our reactions, and with our utterings, with anything that I say. People look at the Hujjaj and they say, X went to Hajj, yet he lies. So who do they mock when they say that? They mock and they ridicule Hajj. When they say, X went to Hajj, he came back and he still lies and he still does the wrong thing. So they are ridiculing Hajj, the Hajj to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, it is so heavy as a responsibility for those who go to Hajj that when they come back, they have to maintain what they have achieved. Yes, if they traveled from Khalq to the Haq, and then from Haq to Haq, from creatures to God, and then from God to God, now the travel back to people should be as an inviter, as someone who is da'iya ila Allah, who's inviting people with his behavior, with his mannerism. This is, in summary, the real Hajj. This is the Hajj and the true Hajj that, yes, the Prophet says, someone who does the Hajj Mabrura, an accepted Hajj, is guaranteed paradise. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those whose Hajj is accepted. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who are from Hujjaj Baytullahi Haram, even if we didn't get to go to. Because Ahlul Bayt said some of those who didn't go to Hajj, they were still Hujjaj. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst the real Hujjaj, and we ask Him to quicken the reappearance of Imam al-Hujjah, and we perform our Hajj with our Imam, inshaAllah. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.